Welcome to the Live Well, Perform Better podcast, brought to you by Below the Line. My name is David Duggan, and I am part of a team made up of experts from the worlds of business, elite sport, adventure, and health and well-being. We are coaches, mentors, and advisors to some of the world's biggest companies and organisations, as well as smaller businesses, entrepreneurs, and people looking to make their mark on the world. Our guiding mantra at Below the Line is Live Well, Perform Better. What does that mean, you might ask? Good question. Maybe the easiest way to describe it from our perspective is finding the formula that works for you when it comes to things like looking after your physical and mental health, running your business, developing your career, leading your people, or simply being able to show up as brilliantly as possible into your own life, both for yourself and those around you. That's why each week I sit down with a member of our team or an invited guest for a conversation that focuses on the question, what do the words live well, perform better mean to you? This question is a way into exploring with people from a range of different backgrounds, industries and disciplines. What are the practices, techniques, habits or ideas that they use to help them to show up and be at their best in all areas of their lives, whether that's as CEOs, leaders or managers, or as parents, family members or friends. We keep it short and sweet so that you can extract all the good stuff and get on with the rest of your day, and hopefully put some of this knowledge, experience and expertise into play for yourself. This week I'm delighted to be joined by a very special guest, Declan O'Connell. Declan is a coach and performance consultant based in Dublin and working internationally. Beginning his working life in corporate banking, Declan decided to retrain as a coach, having answered a growing call within himself to change career. His work now focuses on bringing a scientifically validated and evidence-based approach to supporting people in organisations at all levels to be able to confidently adapt their thinking, behaviours and ways of working when change is called for, which, as we know, has never been more important than right now. Refreshingly honest and simple in his outlook and approach, this conversation really brought home to me the power of reflection and asking yourself two simple questions. Where am I now? And what steps do I need to take next? You can subscribe at www.belowtheline.ie, where you can stay up to date with our podcast, as well as exclusive online events and sessions, including our Press Pause coaching community. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. Alright, so, well look, why don't I just start with the first question, which is, why do you do what you do?
I suppose there's two things for me. One is just impact. So really sort of helping people think differently about their challenges. Not to say that I am the reason for their change, but almost as a vehicle for helping them engineer themselves out of a pressure moment or a complex problem. So I really get my kicks, I suppose, from like supporting people really. But like the selfish side of that, David, is actually like cultivating the life I wanted to live. So I worked 10 years in corporate banking. And while I enjoyed a lot of aspects of it, I couldn't ignore like a gaping hole in my soul around just not being fulfilled. And I kind of wrestled with the whole thing of, okay, I'm earning decent money. I'm climbing the career ladder. I'm doing everything that like the society tells me what I should be doing. So why do I feel this emptiness? Why am I not feeling fulfilled? And going back and retraining and you know, going through the whole student by night piece and cultivating a career that allows me really sort of engage my passion, really live my values. And I suppose gives me that sense of freedom, variety, expression that I think hopefully brings out my best self. So I think, like, I was thinking about this thing even this morning on a walk. I was thinking, you know, if I worked in any other job, I would still be reading the books that I read. I'd be still listening to the podcasts I listen to. So it is a passion, but then it's just, it feels great to be able to live that passion on a daily basis. And it's so funny, like in banking, you'd have your bad days. You'd be kind of going, God, what am I doing here? And you'd be banging your head off the desk. Don't get me wrong, there's days like that as well in this role, but I think on balance, more often you're getting to, I suppose, live your passion, and that's kind of that fuels me the why I do what I do, and then also then impact, just that support that we talked about there in terms of helping move forward.
Just tell me a little bit more about that, and maybe what are the parts of that light you up the most?
Yeah, so essentially, like coaching and consulting is very, very broad. So we've kind of narrowed it down to a niche of building adaptable individuals, teams, organizations, and essentially leading a sort of an evidence-based, a research-based program that helps you build the skill of adaptability. So you've heard it plenty of times in the media over the last couple of years. We need to be more adaptable. We need to change, simply because the pace of life, the rate of change we're all experiencing is huge. So actually, we're giving people and teams the tools to be able to be more adaptable consciously. And so there's things there, but like understanding a bit of self-awareness. How do you show up? What are your preferences? How do you like to communicate? How do you like to perform? How do you like to think? And start with that. Understand when that's working for you, when it's not working for you. And then start having that conversation of when do you need to change your method? When do you need to change your thinking, change your way of performing? And giving people simple tools and techniques that has a load of different, I suppose, offspring benefits from being able to connect better with people, from being able to manage pressure, from being able to problem solve. And there's a load of research and evidence behind, better relationships, better ability to transition, better ability to perform, and even better mental health as well. So that's the area that we focus on. And again, it's down to impact. So you really are able to take all those tools and techniques, bring them into the client's context. What are they currently struggling with? And trying to help them make sense of the tools and the techniques in their context. And then hopefully you can see them overcoming that problem and being able to move forward. And that's the bit that lights me up.
Just moving on to my next question then. Our strap line and below the line is live well, perform better. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, look, I was looking at that, and it's interesting that I find that those two aspects are almost like either end of the spectrum for a lot of people, and that you can actually feel a sort of a pendulum swing between both. So you can imagine over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of New Year's resolutions set. And I imagine that they were on either or end of that spectrum. So actually in January, I'm going to get really healthy. I'm going to eat all healthy food, I'm going to get my exercise in, really going to live well. Or it's a case of 2022 is my year. I'm going to put the foot to the floor and I'm going to really focus on performance. And the problem is that they're great intentions, but if we just focus on one end of the spectrum, we're more likely to see the overplay, the toxic side of it, and we're going to experience that void that we talked about. So trying to manage both at the same time is the key. And what's fascinating about it, and what's brilliant in the coaching and consulting world is it's all subjective. How you define living well might be very, very different to how I define living well. How you define performing better, very different to what I might deem as performing better. Like I know for me, living well is all about connection. So really it's about how much am I connected to myself and how much am I connected to the people I care about. So I know that actually when work gets in the way, that's the thing that suffers, the connection piece. So I'm not living well when I overload myself at work. When I talk about performing better, I find that actually when I am more connected and I do have a bit of time and space, performance almost takes care of itself. So like it is quite fascinating, just even probably for your listeners to even think about what that definition for them actually might mean. What does living well mean for them? Like, as I said, mine is connection, but other people really get their kicks from achievement goals, like financial goals, having time and space, doing something that you love, creativity, whatever it might be. But it's a really interesting strapline because it gets you thinking. And as I said, the key is to find your method for being able to do both.
Related to that then, and maybe just kind of connecting back to something else you spoke about, changing your thinking, being more adaptable. That's the type of stuff you bring to your clients. But what are the practices or habits, behaviours, stuff that you engage in to help you with this living well and performing better piece?
Yeah, well, again, I'd love to be able to sit here and say that I get up at 5 a.m. and I do my 5 miles and my Pilates and my yoga and drink my smoothie before 7 o'clock. I don't. I'm terrible to get out of bed. So like that whole piece about living well can sometimes have that social media aspect to it, is that you need to be this yoga guru in order to live well. For me, there's one key pillar that I rely on, and that's reflection. So it's time and space effectively. And it can be really, really challenging to cultivate time and space. We all have demands in the morning. We all have busy work-life schedules. But that reflection piece for me allows me to think consciously about past behavior. So what are the things that have gone on in the recent past? What are the things that have gone well? What are the things that haven't gone so well? And what was my role and involvement, and could I have done a little bit better in those? And then just kind of thinking about what's ahead for the day. Where do I need to be? What sort of mode of travel do I need to be in? What mindset will best serve me for the day ahead? And again, think about the pace here. Do I need to really fast pace today? Do I need to really churn through things? Or is today a day for me to actually be a bit more reflective, to be quite slow and deliberate? And when we talk about adaptability, the danger is getting stuck in one gear. You only have that fast pace and you're living that fast pace every single day. Well, again, much like if you were driving a car in one gear, you're going to get that sense of overheating. So I think the reflection piece for me, that habit and behavior, is one key pillar that I would like lean on quite heavily. And for me, it's nothing more than going for a walk in the morning or going for a walk in the previous evening. But it's to disconnect, it's to unplug. We're all, I suppose we're all being lured by distraction every moment of the day. So it's, can you consciously create a bit of just time and space for you to have a little chat with yourself?
Absolutely. And do you employ any other techniques? I mean, okay, I get, and I think that's very powerful. Create the space, go for the walk, disconnect. Is there a note taking or a journaling part of any of that, or how does that play out for you?
Yeah. So again, I suppose that there's two key questions that I would have. It's basically where am I and where do I need to be? And there's often a gap between those two things, and I think that's the questions that I drop in before I go for my walk, and find by and large by the end of the walk I've closed that gap. I've figured out, okay, I need to take these next 2 or 3 steps, and they're the things that I'll capture from the walk effectively. So the time and space isn't just walking in the wilderness. There's an intention to it that you're actually that you can call it strategizing. I prefer to call it reflecting, because I suppose there's a bit more self-compassion in reflecting, because there's always going to be that intention and action gap. There's always going to be an element of, I suppose, you're blaming yourself that you didn't get up 6 o'clock this morning for the yoga class. There's great intentions, but our action didn't match it. So I think with reflection, there is a piece of actually just allowing yourself mistakes, allowing yourself to trip up, and reflection allows you to realign.
I love that piece about self-compassion. It's the other thing I'm picking up from you is you give time to be compassionate, you give time to be understanding, which I think is really powerful, as opposed to, geez, I didn't do, because that's our natural tendency. I should have done this, I didn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we all, we're kind of drawn to the negative, aren't we? Like, we're drawn to the things that we didn't do, we're drawn to the things that we've messed up on. Like you talk to like busy executives, they have their to-do list of 10 things, they'll get 7 of them done. What do they focus on? They focus on the 3 things they didn't get done rather than the 7 things they do get done. So I think if you're going through life in that cycle of really looking at what's missing or what you didn't do or beating yourself up, it's a pretty heavy slog
Yeah. No, it's really powerful. You mentioned executives there and the list and all that type of stuff. And I'm really interested in, what you've seen over the last, well, could be the last couple of years or right now, the main health or well-being performance challenges, whatever it might be that you're seeing with the people, the businesses, the clients you're working with.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, with this whole pandemic thing, it's become quite normalized, really, in terms of the whole restrictions and working from home. What I find is that we're judging ourselves of normal standards in abnormal circumstances. So we're really expecting us to be high flying, performing, and yet we're also trying to manage family, work life, working from home, and we're still beating ourselves up over. We're still not giving ourselves any bit of credit to say, actually, I'm just like, your only job, I think, in a pandemic is survival, really. So I think that whole piece around self-compassion is a massive challenge at the moment, because we still think that we need to be doing everything perfect. And I think what's restricting the self-compassion piece is probably that limited time and space that we talked about, the opportunity for reflection, the opportunity to think about things and to forgive yourself. I suppose we know that there's so many competing things for our attention. There's so many I suppose distraction traps around us. Like, who hasn't lost ourselves down an Instagram wormhole for an hour, or who hasn't, just melted into a TV box set for a couple of hours, and then you've life. So actually, where is the time to actually think about things, to assess, to reflect? And I think that is the major challenge, because I suppose if you look at the coming few months, David, like, we're going to be attempting to get back to some level of normality. And so what happens now when we throw commuting to work back into the mix? What happens when we throw office life back into the mix? The sort of the social anxiety of reintegrating with other people and trying to build connection. And we throw that on top of the normal daily stresses as well. So if we don't take that time, just that time out for yourself to think, reflect, be self-compassionate, I think that could lead to a lot of challenges for not just executives, David, just for all of us, really.
You've mentioned the word adaptability, and that I think is going to be really important over the next few months.
One
What
is
type
just
of
think
mindset
about,
is required right now?
I suppose, what are your preferences? So for me, I know that I have a very optimistic mindset. I just think everything will work out and it'll be grand. And it's a nice mindset to step into. But actually, if I get stuck in that optimistic mindset, I get caught out all the time. So, do you know what? I'm not tuned into the risks, the threats. I don't see where all this could go wrong. So I regularly trip myself up, go down blind alleys. And similarly enough, like, if you flipped that and say, actually, people who are very risk aware, who are very focused on the threats in the environment, very well planned and I suppose tuned into what could go wrong, that'll work really, really well for them, until actually they might miss out on, what are the opportunities here? What are the sort of the viewpoint or the perspective of, things that might go well, opportunities for me now. So being able to switch between those two are going to be really, really important, because if you, as I said, if you get fixed in one of those mindsets, you're going to suffer the downside of them. So I think in terms of advice, it is to be able to think about how am I feeling about this situation, and how do I challenge those thoughts as well? What might be the opposite viewpoint? Because there's always a different perspective here. And I think that's key when we're talking about adaptability, is not to get stuck in one gear. And again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but the only way you can do that is by creating time and space to really check in on how you're feeling, and then to be able to challenge those thoughts. Problem is that we know, like, biologically, that stress makes us fixed. So like, stress inhibits our ability to be adaptable. So I suppose that whole piece around your strapline of living well, performing better, that's something that you definitely invite people to be curious about. What does that mean? and what are the key activities that allow me to live well? What are the key activities that help me perform better? And that for me is gold, because we don't really take time out to understand the method that lies behind our performance.
My last question is, what's the one piece of advice you would give to anyone looking to live well and perform better? Now, maybe I'm preempting your answer, but say it probably is space for time and reflection. But if that is the answer, what's your advice for people to kind of actually take that time out?
Yeah, like it's like any sort of habit. Like, I mean, this is like New Year's resolution. I've never gone to the gym before. Now I'm going to go to the gym 6 days a week. Like, that's not going to happen. So are you really going to create time and space every single day? Chances are you're not. And I felt like a bit of a fraud, actually, David, because I was walking the beach this morning and was having a think about the podcast, and but I was also listening to music. So I was kind of going, am I really walking the talk here? And so what I did actually was I just popped the earphones out for, well, I think maybe 15, 20 minutes. And it just allowed a bit of kind of time and space for my own thoughts to come to the surface. And that might be a great starting point. It sounds ridiculously simple, but if you think about it, all of us, when we're going out for a walk, we tend to move towards podcasts, music, or audiobooks to keep us company. And so can you just try maybe 5 minutes, 2 minutes of just walking in your own company and just see what comes up? And I'm acutely aware that actually people who could be listening to us right now are out for a walk as well. So I'm telling them to maybe unplug after we're done and take a bit of time and space for themselves.
Yeah, or pause it now and come back in 5 minutes' time, whatever it might be. But it also links back in many ways, to what you were saying at the start, which was there was something in you drawing you to this work, and that only finds expression when you stop to listen to it. And what's it saying, and what's it telling me to do next?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's interesting if we really take the time to look at ourselves, what's not being said or what's not being listened to, and what's that voice that's dying to be heard inside you. And when you actually give time and space for that to rise, it just makes so much intuitive sense. But if we keep running from it or distracting from it, we're always going to feel that split, I think, because we're kind of being inauthentic that way, because we're being distracted and we're living a life essentially on autopilot and not really tuning into what our body's telling us.
Fantastic. Declan, we'll leave it there. Thanks very, very much for giving me your time, and you're someone I have huge time for and respect, and I loved everything you said there, loads of honesty and openness, so thanks a million for doing it.
Magic. Thanks, David. Real pleasure.